find ourselves going through so many times as believers, so many times as people, as we trying to navigate through life, and we're trying to navigate through the highs and the lows, but more specifically talking about navigating the times when we find ourselves going through the lows. And joining me this afternoon to chat is specifically about that. It is singer, songwriter, and absolute just awesome person that we have on Impact 103's lineup. He has a show on Tuesday and Thursday mornings from 11 a.m. till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And he keeps us company, always bring us those artist interviews, always getting us into the music. I'm talking about the one and only Tondi Rams. Tondi, how you doing, my brother?
Whew, I'm so good, bro. It hits different being on the other side.
Yeah. I'm sure you're probably thinking, okay, I feel out of control. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on right now.
I want to press the button now. I want to do this, bro.
No,
I have nothing. My hands have nothing to do now.
Which is great work. Thank you so much for joining us on the afternoon drive, man.
It's really a pleasure being here, and what an honor being able to have this conversation with you today. So I'm just really excited to be here, man. This is home.
And I wonder if people actually know that you make music as well. Do people actually know that you're an artist? Like one Impact 103 listeners.
I wonder, hey, but like I do mention it here and there. So I don't think fully. So I think the few that have caught it, have caught it. But today they get to know the other side of me, which is today I'm here as a music artist.
I'm excited about this interview because we've had lots of conversations specifically about the song, or you and songwriting, and the space you find yourself in songwriting. And I always find it so interesting to be able to hear from artists when they speak about that process. What does the process look like for you when it comes to writing? Is it a matter of you look at your life and then you write, or an idea? Does it come to you like this thing? What's the process looking like for Tondi when he writes music?
I love that question. I think that the process looks different for different songs. And with a bunch of songs, it's, I'm looking at my life and I'm writing from a personal perspective of having experienced it. And for sometimes it's a lyric idea that comes when I'm doing something, and maybe my attention is drawn to something, and then I write about that, or maybe friends or family members like experiencing something, and then I write from that perspective as well. So sometimes it's it's my own life. And that's what, even with the music I'm releasing now, it's more my life. Some of the songs are inspired by other people, like my sister. So things like that. So it depends. Sometimes, I might wake up with like a melody and I'm like, wait, there's something to this. And then that happens. But, with something like the new music I'm creating now, I think a lot of personal experiences are part of that.
I want to chat specifically about Lowest Point, which is your latest single that released now recently. This was last week, if I'm not mistaken.
Sunday, actually.
Sunday, on your birthday.
On my birthday.
Yeah.
There we
First
go.
things first, happy belated birthday.
Thank you
and
so much.
Well, congratulations with the release of the single. Lowest Point, that's such a strong title.
Yeah.
If you were to wrap up the message behind the song, the message that you want people to take after listening to that song into 2 sentences, what would it be?
You may experience the darkest season of your life, but there is hope. And God is your hope.
Yeah.
He is the light that you need in that darkness. And I think that's the greatest takeaway, because that was my experience being in the darkest season of my life, and feeling like there's no light in that moment. I was angry at God for that matter. And imagine, I feel like that's the last straw. If you can get angry at God, it's just like,
it's a lot. But many times I hear people speak about that, and it's just like, how do you even bounce from that and further? Like, how do you bounce outside of feeling that to pivoting from it? Like, how was it for you? Because it's one thing to be in it, it's another thing to talk about it in past tense.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't know if I would have come out of it as soon as I did had I not received a call from a friend who was in Cape Town, who I had not spoken to in years, probably like 2 years, right? He calls me. It's during my lowest point. I was staying in Sunnyside at that time, and he gives me a call. That time, bro, I was just not I was not in a good space. So he calls me. He's like, "Hey, bro, how are you doing?" And the formalities, right? You know how it is with us people. I'm good, bro. How you doing?
Yeah.
And then he stops me. He's like, "Hey, bro, no. How are you really doing?" Yo, I remember being confronted with that question. And in that moment, I had a decision to make. Do I, be transparent, or do I just move on with it and just say, "Yeah, I'm good, bro," like I said, right? But in that moment, I felt in my heart, I was like, nah, be honest. because the way he asked it was so intentional. And so I answered, I was like, bro, I'm honestly not good. And what came after that was really amazing because he started speaking about my situation before I even told him about it.
Yeah.
And that's when that call happened, I was like, wait, God sees me. God used a friend of mine who I've not spoken to in a long time to call me, and he checked in on me intentionally to find out how I'm really doing. There's something spiritual about that. And that's why, man, I feel like the people around us have a big role to play in our lives because God will use people in our lives to kind of help us come out of that season.
Yeah.
And that's why after the call, I remember looking at God and I was like, Lord, I'm sorry. I was mad at you. I was mad at the wrong person. I know you're on the cusp of my dark season.
Yeah.
And I just like really repented in that moment because I realized that God really cares about me and he sees me. And yeah.
One of the things that's standing out in what you're saying, you're speaking a lot about vulnerability. You're speaking a lot about transparency. What does vulnerability mean to you in your journey with Christ,
Sure.
and people around you?
Sure. I think it means being blatantly honest about what I'm processing, what I'm going through, without trying to keep a facade of looking, in a certain way. People know me as a very like extroverted person. I'm a people's person, very loving and all those things. And it can be hard for someone like me who is the life of the party, someone who people look at and are like, yo, this guy's always good. You're always smiling. Do you ever get mad and angry? And I'm like, yeah, I do, right? But I think a personal responsibility of mine is being okay with being honest about not being okay. And I think it's hard sometimes, especially when you're that kind of a person, because you think, am I going to let people down? They put me on this pedestal, but I don't care about the pedestal.
Yeah.
Because just holding onto the pedestal and what people will think of me, if I'm honest and vulnerable, it only keeps me in jail. I'm in bondage. And so I don't want to live my life in bondage, but rather, in freedom. And so that's why for me, it means just being open. And doesn't mean that I'm going to be open with everybody. There's certain people that I get to be honest with, and I can, really be vulnerable to,
Yeah.
because not everybody will treat your vulnerability with respect. Some people might misuse that and abuse that, but some people, who your people are, who you can really be honest, and they got your back.
Yeah. I want to go back to something that you said earlier, where you're speaking about how, even specifically in that season, you found yourself in a space where you were angry with God. How do you,
Yeah.
we what I don't want us to do is to not mull over it, but to skip it as if it's just a moment where you get a phone call like that and suddenly everything has changed and suddenly you're in a great space with God. I'm sure there must have been a process, for someone who's listening now saying, yo, Tondi, I'm thinking about what you say. I listen to Impact because I love the station, but actually, if I'm being honest, I'm not okay. My relationship with God is not okay. And what does that process look like? The place back to being in the lowest point, but trusting God for life outside of the lowest point.
Sure. Should I start about the whole being mad of God situation? Being mad of God, bro, it comes with saying some, like some non-respectable things to God, bro. And it's as honest as it gets, right? And the thing about God is that you can come at him with the hardest of punches, but he's already seen that, right? And he knows it. And just his grace covering me in that. But man, whew, yeah, there's so much, man, that I'm taken back to that moment in 2017, when I was doing all that and I had so much animosity in me towards God, feeling like you let me down. But life outside of that, and I believe you're talking about life now, or life
especially moving out of that
moving
space,
out of it.
I think a lot of us go through the moments and the seasons where it feels like, man, it's so overwhelming, and
Yeah.
and then you have a God moment like that phone call. But what that looks like, because it's not like from that day suddenly you and God are like,
we besties again. Oh, we back in.
and you're living in the fullness of God. You're praying every day. You're reading the
Sure.
Bible. Like that life outside of. Let me maybe phrase the question this way: how does it look like to still, in your surroundings, see a lowest point, but to still have a connection with God that's got the hope of life outside of the lowest point?
Ooh, that's really powerful, man. I think for me, it was really steady steps, right? In just engaging with God. And I think from that moment where, I realized that, wait, God is not actually the person that I'm supposed to be mad at, and he's not the cause of this. I think from there, it's just reconciling that in my heart to say, you know what, this is where it is. And being able to say, Lord, okay, I want to journey with you back where I used to be. I know this dark season came and disrupted all of that, but it means me engaging with other people now, going back to my circle and being open, about my experience. It looks like me going back to church and being able to praise God because I mean it and I'm not angry anymore.
Yeah. Because I'm
Um,
assuming that's because you went because you had to,
yeah,
not
because
because
not
you
not
wanted
because of
to
a
be.
relationship at that
Yeah.
point. Just like, nah, you don't see
Out
me
of duty.
out of duty. But now there's this love that is restored, my love for him that is restored, and it looks like me being able to say, Lord, thank you. Thank you for seeing me. It starts with acknowledging the situation, the lowest point, and it starts with that. Lord, thank you for seeing me. Like, I recognize that you didn't leave me alone. You are able to see me in my darkest moment, and you're able to bring me out. And I think from that place of gratitude, like, I was able to draw near and near to him, to the point where I felt like, now, okay, I get myself. And I think a lot of it has to do with identity as well. My lost point also was stemmed from comparison. You feel me? And I came back actually from a high. I traveled to Belarus with a group of people for a mission trip. That's the best time. And then I come back in SA. Shortly after that, guess what happens, man? These lies start trickling in, right? I start looking at. I have a younger brother. His name is Tondi Rams, and he's a music artist as well, right? For the longest time, bro, I never ever thought of it in that way where I compared myself with him. Always happy for him, right? But that moment I come back from my trip, I'm seeing what he's doing, all that stuff. But then the deception starts. Hey, look at your brother. Why aren't you doing as well? Why isn't your life, why isn't your music career flourishing as much, right? And those lies start trickling in, and I started receiving them or accepting them. And that was the problem that I had is I let it be. I withered in it, and instead of of rejecting those thoughts and really looking at reality and being like, no, he's on his lane, I'm on my lane.
Yeah.
Like, our journeys are different completely. I allowed myself to get sucked in that hole, and from there I started looking at different things in my life that weren't going right and feeling like, what, my life is not going anyway and there's no hope, man. Like, so that's what took me into that darkness.
Lowest Point. It's a new song by Tondi Rams. He's released it on Sunday on his birthday. Such a beautiful story that he shared with us this afternoon so far. And I think many of us are listening to it and thinking, I relate with this so much. And I'm so glad that he not only is sharing the story, but he's put it into music that you and I can be able to hear the story of, and be able to look back to God and say, we see you. Thank you for your presence in my life. And my hope is that as you hear this, it will encourage you if you find yourself in the lowest point. Ooh.
Yeah,
Tondi
man.
Rams with the lowest point on Impact 103. Man, this is such a powerful song. You say it's your most vulnerable song yet that you've ever written. Before we wrap up our time together, what is something that you've learned from your lowest point that you feel like you would go through it again just to be able to learn that about God?
Yo, what a question. Wow, have I even thought of that, bro?
Because I think many times we wish away these seasons,
Mm-hmm.
but there's something that we learn about God. What is something that you've learned about God in your lowest point season?
You can't do life alone. I think that's one of the things, because I think in that time I secluded myself. I distanced myself, from community, and that's why I think I always go back to that call to say, because of that call, someone who intentionally checked in. But imagine if I had not done that and isolated myself, but still had community around me that knew what I was going through and were able to speak into my life, and I lifted up my hands during that season.
Yeah.
I think that's something powerful that I've really learned, is that when I have people who are intentionally looking out for me, I am able to come out of of a low time and low season even quicker, than I would alone, and just trying to just like hide myself, and which is something that we tend to do. But also the fact that God cares,
Yeah.
and He sees. I think that's one of the biggest things, bro. Like, and if, till this day, that's what I live by, knowing that God sees me and He cares for me, to a point where He was able to touch someone I had not spoken to in 2 years. Someone was able to call me and say, hey, how are you doing? And I said, I'm good. But he didn't pass over that. He said, hey, how are you actually doing? For me, bro, God cares, man.
As we wrap up our time together, Tondi, we could chat for forever.
Sure.
There's someone who's listening now who's in the lowest point. What do you say to them? What do you say to Tondi back in 2017, knowing what you know in 2023?
You are not alone. You might feel like you're the only person going through what you're going through. You might feel like this is only unique to you, but it's not. And so many people have come out of it strong. So many people have been able to be victorious over it. And the same for you. You will be victorious over this. Don't give up hope. Hope is one thing that you should hold on to, regardless of what happens. Keep believing that God is for you and He's fighting for you and He cares. I think that's the best thing, man, knowing that He loves you and cares for you. That will hold you through anything. And, you've got people around you who care about you.
Yeah. Tondi Rams joining us right here on the Afternoon Drive with Kgosi. Man, thank you so much for popping by, switching things
Thank
up
you so
and not
much.
doing the show things, but just spending some time with us, talking to us about your new music. You can be sure to catch the song at Lowest Point from Tondi Rambani on all digital streaming platforms.
Tondi Rams.
Tondi Rams.
There we go.
Sorry, you as an artist, not as a presenter. I'm used to your full ID,
Yeah.
passports and details and stuff. Be sure to check it out, Tondi Rams on all digital streaming platforms. And I hope that you've been encouraged, that maybe if you find yourself in a space where you feel like you're in the lowest point, that you be reminded that not only is God able to meet you there, but sometimes it's even the people around you that will pull you out of that place, that God will use to meet you in and get you out of that lowest point that you find yourself in.